One of the most common questions I've received since being on YouTube, since the Squat Everyday journey, is that have you improved your vertical leap since starting the Squat Everyday journey, and also have you improved your sprint time? The simple answer to that question is I don't really know. I don't know because I never really tested at the start of this journey. I never thought I was going to kind of make 500 days of squatting every day. It just kind of developed into what it is now. But I just want to basically say that I don't think my numbers have improved because of hip internal rotation. When you do squats and deadlifts and you're kind of in that plane of motion with bilateral feet, if you look down and both of your feet are kind of like in the x-axis, if you continuously spend time in that kind of plane of movement, you are getting your external rotators stronger, but you're not getting your internal hip rotators strong at all. What I know about running and jumping is that you need hip internal rotation. And my hip internal rotation has suffered immensely since doing the Squat Everyday program, which is probably why I had the hip pain on the right side, why it kind of developed. I've kind of lost my hip internal rotation to such a point that my hip now hurts, right? If you're an athlete, I've had a lot of you guys say to me, do you think squatting every day is going to improve my jump and my sprint times? Some of you guys are actually playing rugby, basketball and all sorts. And over the time, I've kind of talked to you guys and about this very topic, and it's hard for me to kind of tell you exactly what I think, but I don't think squatting and deadlifting is going to hurt, but I don't think you should spend the majority of your time in that. These movements are great, but they shouldn't be the primary. The primary movements that you should kind of spend most of your time on is kind of unilateral leg movements, lunging, Bulgarian split squats. The reason for that is that unilateral leg movements work your internal rotators and your external rotators. Bilateral leg workouts only work the external rotation, external rotators. So one does both, the other does only one. The other one does only one and also gets the other one less and less range of motion. So doing deadlifts and squats, especially the way I do them, and this frequently, and so much concentration on these two movements, is that I haven't addressed internal hip rotation at all, and as a result, my hip internal rotation is basically 5 degrees at best, maybe 10 if I really warm up. My external rotation is fantastic, it's like a 45 degrees. I can really kind of externally rotate my femur. That's fine. But if I was interested in jumping higher or sprinting quicker, I would have spent most of my time with lunges and Bulgarian split squats, because those movements do both, external and internal hip rotators. It gets everything stronger. You're not going to lose your hip and internal rotation. If you know anything about running and jumping, you can look this up. You basically need to have hip internal rotation for that leg, the back leg, in order for you to have a good gait of running. If you have limitations, your hip flexors get tired, and you shorten your stroke, and you have kind of external rotation of your back trailing leg, and it basically makes a mess of your gait, of your movement. I know back in the day, Ben Johnson, he was one of the gold medalist sprinters, 100-meter sprinters. He got done for steroids, I think in 1988 or 1990, whenever the Seoul Olympics was. He got done for steroids, but around that time he was like the man, right? He was setting world records and whatever, and he was known for, there was all this footage coming out of him, squatting massive weight. Like he was doing 270 kilos for a set of 6, 7, 8 reps. He was always kind of doing it to a box or a high box, and so he had, just by seeing those numbers and seeing those footages, he had incredibly strong glutes and quads because of all those squats. He was actually really known for jumping out of the box like nobody's business. He had incredible acceleration because of those two things. He was a gold medalist, meaning he was one of the best athletes in the world. He also was watched by some of the best trainers in the world. And so what people didn't see is that he spent a lot of time working on his hip internal rotation. He was a sprinter. Every time you sprint, you're working on your hip internal rotation. Because of those footages, and because of the footages not basically explaining the full story, people thought, okay, in order for me to run like Ben Johnson, I need to have a 270 kilo back squat, or a parallel, or a quarter squat, or whatever it was, parallel squat. And so people started squatting. People started squatting incredible weight with really poor really poor range of motion. And so, like for the following 10 years, now I'm not a sprinter, but I've kind of heard things and kind of looked into things over my time on YouTube, and over my time kind of playing sports, basketball, whatever. And I kind of knew that there's like a tipping point of diminishing return. So you're going to get better initially if you improve your squat like a little bit, but there's going to be a point of diminishing returns where your squat numbers are going to basically not mean much after a certain point. And this is because of this hip internal rotation. So you can get your glutes stronger, you can get your quads stronger, you can get your hip external rotators really strong. But if you start losing points, degrees of internal hip rotation, you start losing athleticism. It's like that. So you can get a big squat, but you also need to make sure you have a really good split squat, and you have a really good Bulgarian squat, and you have a really good lunge. For sprinters, they spend most of their time in this split stance, in running. So if you're interested in jumping higher and running quicker, just be careful. Be careful in trying to pursue a big deadlift and big squat, because these movements, athleticism is basically hip internal rotation. I remember, some of you guys that watch the NBA, I remember watching an interview of Zach LaVine. Now, Zach LaVine is, man, he's one of the most athletic people I've ever seen in my life. And I've watched a lot of basketball in my time. His ability to just pop off the ground with like minimal knee bend is just unheard of. He won a couple of dunk contests in his time. He's still a young fella, but he's done his ACL recently. Anyway, he's come back. He's still really athletic. But in the interview, he basically talked about what his training program looked like kind of over the summers, in previous seasons, and also when he was in college. The thing that stuck out in my mind was lunging. He spent a lot of time lunging, split stance, just doing that over and over again. He didn't mention deadlifts. He didn't mention squats. He mentioned lunging. And it makes sense, right? He's an incredible 1-foot jumper. Well, this is the thing. He's also an excellent 2-foot jumper. So if you have a really strong lunge or a really strong Bulgarian split squat, you're going to have a really strong 1-foot jump, and you're also going to have a strong 2-foot jump. But if you don't do lunging at all and you just do deadlifts and squats, you might have a really strong, really high 2-foot jump, but you're not going to have any sort of athleticism in sprinting and 1-foot jump. So if I was a coach, if my son decides to kind of play basketball or soccer or whatever, he can squat, but the majority of his time I'm going to recommend he does with lunging and Bulgarian split squats rather than bilateral, traditional back squats and front squats. It's because of that hip internal rotation. So be very, very careful. If some of you guys are watching this and you're like, I just want to squat to be able to jump higher and run quicker, understand there's a tipping point. And after that tipping point, you can actually regress in your athleticism because you're getting less and less hip internal rotation. Now, the stronger your external rotators are, your glutes, the stronger they get, the less of hip internal rotation degrees you're gonna have. You're gonna start losing unless you are stretching like a maniac all the time. So that reminds me, man. This is probably the reason why I have had the hip pain on the right side. My hip rotation, man, it's shocking. It's like at 0 degrees, maybe 5 degrees if I'm lucky, 10 degrees if I'm fully warmed up and ready to go. It should be at 35 degrees. My hip external rotation is fantastic. It's like a 45, 50 degrees. I can really turn that hip out like nobody's business. But internal, struggling. So I know what to work on. So anyway, just wanted to say that for all you guys out there who are asking me questions about, can I jump high? Can I sprint quickly? The answer is probably not, because I've lost a lot of hip mobility. Even though you see me squatting ass to grass and all that, there's a lot of mobility lost there in terms of running quickly and jumping. But anyway, last 2 days I have been sick. You can probably hear it in my voice. That's why I put up that video yesterday of me just doing a short video. I lost my voice essentially. So frustration this year has been bumpy as hell, but anyway, I can't complain. There's people out there who have much worse circumstances. Today I just basically hit a squat of 160. I hit 160 today. Don't want to push it, don't want to do anything extreme. Frustration central, but anyway, it is what it is. I can't complain. I'm blessed to be able to have this opportunity. So I'm happy. I have to be happy. But anyway, tomorrow's gonna be a better day. All right, guys. Hopefully this video has kind of cleared some things out for you. I'm not an expert in this field, but this is kind of me explaining to you what I understand about the topic. All right, guys. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace out.